Seattle 2002 was a city caught between its grunge rock roots and a rising tech boom. For the Larson family, it was home, a backdrop for their tangled, heartfelt lives. Every Sunday, the family convened in the cozy kitchen of their Queen Anne house, the aroma of roasted coffee mingling with the scent of freshly baked cinnamon rolls. Ava Larson, the matriarch, insisted on this ritual, a time for connection, laughter, and the occasional argument. Ava, a former therapist turned family glue, had a way of balancing warmth with sternness. With striking auburn hair streaked with silver, her presence was magnetic. She thrived on emotional connection and found endless joy in her children's lives. Her husband, Otis, was a bear of a man. Broad shoulders, a booming laugh, and the energy of a high school football coach. A retired marine engineer, Otis approached family life with the same disciplined pragmatism he brought to his career, often pushing Danny, their eldest, to achieve more in his tech ventures. Danny Larson was a quintessential Seattle coder, lanky, perpetually in flannel shirts, and equipped with a sharp wit that matched his coding skills. His latest project, a dating app called HeartSync, was consuming his life. His vision? To build an algorithm that understood compatibility beyond surface-level traits. But weeks of debugging and testing had led to frustration, and he couldn't bring himself to admit his struggles. Until that Sunday. Then there was Paige, the youngest Larson, an aspiring writer with a flair for comedy and a sharp tongue. Paige's stories often blurred the lines between reality and fiction, weaving everyday chaos into hilariously poignant narratives. Her current project was a romantic comedy novel, half-written, thoroughly charming, and perilously close to missing her publisher's deadline. She relied on her mother's advice and her family's antics for inspiration, often saying, "This house is a walking sitcom." On this particular Sunday, over steaming mugs of coffee, the family's easy banter took a more serious turn. "I have to tell you guys something," Danny said, raking his fingers through his unkempt hair. "HeartSync isn't going well. I'm stuck. I can't seem to make the matches feel real." Paige smirked. "Maybe because you've never been on a date in your life." Ava shot her daughter a warning look, but Otis chuckled. "She's got a point, son. How are you supposed to build a dating app if you don't date?" Danny groaned. "Thanks, Dad. Real helpful." Paige leaned forward, her eyes gleaming mischievously. "You know, this would make a great subplot for my book. Nerdy coder creates a dating app but can't get a date himself. It writes itself. Maybe if you focused on your deadlines instead of roasting me, you'd finish your book," Danny retorted. Crossing his arms, Ava intervened. "All right, enough. Danny, why don't you test the app yourself? You're single, and it's the perfect way to refine the algorithm. Paige, you could try it too. Think of the material you'd get for your book." Otis nodded enthusiastically. "I second that. Maybe this will get you two out of the house for once. And who knows, I wouldn't mind some grandkids one day." Paige snorted. "Don't hold your breath, Dad." But Danny's eyes narrowed as an idea took shape. "Actually, that's not a bad idea. Paige, what if we make this interesting? You use the app, and I'll pick 3 dates for you. In return, you pick 3 dates for me." Paige raised an eyebrow. "What's the catch? You get to follow me on my dates to steal material for your book, but I get to come along on yours to see how HeartSync performs in the field," Danny said, grinning. "We each go on 3 dates. Deal?" Ava clapped her hands. "This could be fun." Paige rolled her eyes, but extended her hand. "Fine. But I'm picking the weirdest women I can find for you. Good luck." "I've seen your taste," Danny shot back. They shook on it, sealing a bet that would intertwine their lives in ways neither of them could foresee. The following week was a whirlwind of algorithms and laughter. Danny fine-tuned HeartSync's interface while Paige scoured the app for interesting matches for her brother. She chose Ellie, a quirky artist who spoke in riddles, Sandra, a competitive trivia champion, and Zoe, a part-time clown with a soft spot for existential philosophy. Danny wasn't to be outdone. He picked Ryan, a charismatic barista with a flair for dramatics, Derek, a fitness fanatic who ran a gym, and Max, a reserved botanist who communicated best through his plants. Their shared plan to sabotage each other's dating experiences quickly turned into a hilarious journey of self-discovery, misunderstandings, and unexpected bonds. The morning of their first dates, the siblings met in the kitchen. Paige wore a flowy green dress, a notebook tucked under her arm. Danny opted for his usual flannel but swapped jeans for khakis. "Don't embarrass me," Paige warned. "No promises," Danny quipped. Their separate dates began with awkward introductions but soon spiraled into unexpected moments. Ellie's riddles baffled Danny, but her passion for art inspired a new idea for HeartSync. Meanwhile, Paige found herself laughing uncontrollably at Ryan's exaggerated impressions, realizing that humor could bridge the gaps between strangers. Shape, the dates, the challenges, and the siblings' witty commentary on each other's choices brought them closer, even as the stakes and the chaos rose with each outing. Danny stood outside a small art cafe, shifting awkwardly on his feet. Ellie arrived 5 minutes late, wearing a patchwork jacket covered in paint splatters. Her auburn curls were wild, and she carried a sketchbook under one arm. "Hi, Danny," she said, tilting her head. "What's black and white and writ all over?" Danny blinked. A newspaper?" She smiled cryptically. "Clothes. A zebra reading a novel." Without waiting for his response, she motioned toward the cafe. "Shall we?" Inside, Danny struggled to keep up with her rapid-fire musings about abstract art, metaphors in everyday life, and a heated debate about whether coffee foam qualified as an art form. At first, her riddles and quirks made him feel like he was on an entirely different wavelength. But then, Ellie pulled out her sketchbook, flipping to a page filled with designs that took his breath away. "This," she said, pointing to a swirling pattern of colors and shapes, "is what compatibility looks like to me. Connections aren't linear, they're messy and unpredictable." For the first time in weeks, Danny felt inspired. Her abstract designs sparked an idea. What if HeartSync's algorithm incorporated visual cues and creative matches, not just data? He scribbled notes on a napkin, barely noticing Ellie watching him with a knowing smile. Meanwhile, Paige sat in a cozy bookstore cafe, tapping her notebook impatiently. Ryan, her date, burst through the door 10 minutes late, carrying a paper bag of pastries and wearing a bright orange scarf. "Sorry I'm late. Got held up perfecting the latte art for these bad boys." He plopped the bag onto the table and sat across from her, his hazel eyes sparkling. Paige tried not to laugh at his theatrical entrance. "Late and bribing me with pastries? Bold move." Ryan grinned, pulling out a croissant and breaking it in half. "Life's too short for bad first impressions. So, Paige, tell me, what's the best joke you've ever written?" Paige hesitated. Sharing her writing, especially her comedic bits, always felt vulnerable, but Ryan's earnest expression disarmed her. "Okay, fine," she said, smirking. "Why don't skeletons fight? Because they don't have the guts." Ryan burst into laughter, loud and genuine. "That's terrible. I love it." To Paige's surprise, their conversation flowed effortlessly. Ryan's dramatic reenactments of awkward customer encounters at the coffee shop had her crying with laughter. She found herself jotting down notes, small details, clever phrases, and the ease of humor as a bridge between people. That evening, back in the Larson family kitchen, Danny and Paige reconvened to debrief. Ava and Otis sat at the table, eager for updates. "How'd it go?" Ava asked, refilling her tea. Danny groaned. "She spoke in riddles the entire time? I felt like I was on a quiz show." "But," Ava prompted. "But," Danny admitted, "she gave me this great idea for the app. Maybe I'm overthinking the matches and need to focus on unexpected connections." "See? Personal growth already," Otis said, clapping Danny on the back. Paige crossed her arms. "Ryan was ridiculous. He showed up late and bribed me with pastries." "And," Danny pressed, raising an eyebrow. "And," Paige sighed, "he was actually funny, like laugh out loud funny. I might have stolen half his jokes for my book." Danny smirked. "So you're saying I win round one? It's not a competition, is that?" Paige shot back, but her grin betrayed her. Their parents exchanged a knowing look as the siblings fell into their usual rhythm of playful jabs, the air between them lighter. The dates, awkward and unexpected, had given them more than just stories. They'd found sparks of inspiration and a new appreciation for their shared challenge. As the second dates loomed, neither Danny nor Paige could have predicted the twists that awaited them. From mistaken identities to one particularly chaotic karaoke night, their adventures in matchmaking were only just beginning. Danny adjusted his glasses as he stepped into a bustling pub downtown, the hum of chatter and clinking glasses filling the air. Sandra, his second date, was already seated at a high-top table, surrounded by a small stack of trivia cards. Her dark hair was tied back in a neat ponytail, and her sharp eyes locked onto him the moment he arrived. "You're late by 2 minutes," she announced, tapping her watch. "Punctuality is key in competition." Danny chuckled nervously. "Noted. Should I sit, or will there be a pop quiz first?" Sandra smirked. "Sit, but I will be testing you." She slid a trivia card across the table toward him. Question 1. What is the capital of Burkina Faso? Danny blinked. "That's not an icebreaker." Her smile widened. "It's Ouagadougou, but I'll give you partial credit for trying." As the evening unfolded, Danny found himself on the defensive, fending off Sandra's rapid-fire trivia challenges. She was relentless but undeniably brilliant. Between rounds of quiz domination, they managed to find common ground. Sandra's love of strategy reminded Danny of the logic he used in coding, and they debated whether human connections could be reduced to algorithms, or if they were purely random. "It's not random," Sandra argued, sipping her beer. "It's all about patterns and probabilities. Trivia teaches you that." Danny raised his glass. To patterns, probabilities, and the pursuit of answers. For the first time in a while, he felt intrigued, not just by the conversation, but by the prospect of someone so fiercely passionate about knowledge. Across town, Paige's second date was unfolding in stark contrast. She stood at the entrance of Ironhaven Gym, staring at Derek, a chiseled wall of muscle in a sleeveless hoodie. His enthusiasm radiated as he gestured toward the gym equipment. "Ready to crush it?" he asked, his energy infectious. "Define it," Paige replied warily. "Because I'm more of a coffee and books kind of crusher." Derek laughed. "Don't worry, we'll start light. Come on, I'll show you how to deadlift." Paige followed, already regretting her decision. Derek's fitness tutorial quickly escalated into a hilarious montage of near disasters. Paige dropped a dumbbell on her foot, accidentally sent a yoga ball rolling across the gym, and discovered she couldn't plank for more than 5 seconds without collapsing. Despite the physical calamity, Derek's encouraging nature surprised her. He wasn't just a gym bro. He was genuinely kind, patient, and excited to share his passion. By the end of the session, Paige was laughing as she wiped sweat from her brow. "You survived," Derek teased, handing her a protein bar. "Barely," she shot back. "This better not end up in my obituary." As they walked out of the gym, Derek asked, "So what's your thing? You know, the thing you love so much you could do it every day?" Paige thought about it for a moment. "Writing, telling stories that make people laugh or feel something, that's my thing." "That's cool," Derek said, nodding. "Maybe next time, you can show me your world. Fair trade, right?" Paige smiled despite herself. "Maybe?" That evening, the siblings found themselves back in the kitchen, recounting their wildly different experiences. Sandra was intense, Danny admitted, pouring himself a glass of water. She turned trivia into a blood sport. "Did you win?" Paige asked. "Define win," Paige snorted. "Meanwhile, I almost died at the gym. Did you know there's a machine called a deathlift? Or maybe that's just what I called it." Otis, eavesdropping from the couch, chimed in. "Deadlift, Paige, and it builds character." Danny grinned. "So, who had the more traumatizing date?" "Hard to say," Paige replied, leaning against the counter. "But Derek wasn't all bad. Turns out under all the muscle, he's actually sweet." "Sweet?" Danny mocked, feigning surprise. "From the girl who said gym rats have the personality of a treadmill?" Paige threw a dish towel at him, and Ava chuckled as she walked into the room. "Well, it sounds like you're both learning something," Ava said, giving each of them a knowing look. "Who knows? Maybe you'll even enjoy date number 3. Danny and Paige exchanged skeptical glances. If the past 2 dates were anything to go by, the third round would be anything but ordinary. Danny arrived at a park where his third date, Zoe, had chosen to meet. It was a mild, drizzly Seattle afternoon, the kind where the clouds hugged the city like a gray blanket. Danny scanned the park for someone who fit the description of a part-time clown and froze when he spotted her. Zoe was unmistakable. Her dark curls framed a face with subtle, lingering traces of clown makeup. Faint white around her eyes and a smudge of red on her lips, like she'd hastily tried to wipe it off, but didn't care enough to finish the job. She wore a long, colorful scarf and carried a large tote bag, from which a pair of juggling pins peeked out. "Danny, right?" she said, approaching with a bounce in her step. "You must be my date. Or are we all just players in a cosmic joke where dating apps are the punchline?" Danny blinked. Yeah, I'm Danny, and I guess I'll be the straight man to your routine today. Zoe's laugh was warm and genuine. That's the spirit. Let's walk. As they strolled, Zoe alternated between surprising Danny with juggling tricks and diving into deep, philosophical musings. She talked about how clowns strip down the human experience to its most absurd and beautiful core, and Danny found himself unexpectedly drawn in. People think clowns are all slapstick and balloons, Zoe said, tossing a juggling pin into the air. But really, we're just reflecting the absurdity of life back at the world. Like relationships, aren't they just two people trying to make sense of the chaos together? Danny chuckled, adjusting his glasses. I've spent weeks coding an algorithm to predict compatibility, and you make it sound so simple. Because it is, Zoe said, balancing the pin on her nose before letting it drop into her hand. It's not about predictability, it's about embracing the unpredictability. Danny realized she had a point. Zoe's free-spirited nature challenged his structured, data-driven mindset in a way that felt refreshing, even liberating. Meanwhile, Paige stepped into Max's greenhouse, an oasis of green nestled behind his small apartment. The air was humid and fragrant, a stark contrast to the crisp Seattle weather. Max was standing in the center, watering a fern. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that fell into his eyes, and his expression was calm but a little shy. "Hi, Paige," he said softly, barely looking up from his plants. I hope you like greenery." "I mean, I've never met a plant I didn't like," Paige replied, looking around in awe. "But this feels like stepping into a jungle. How do you keep track of all this?" Max smiled faintly, his hands brushing a vine as if he were petting it. "They're like friends. Each one has its own needs and quirks. This one," he gestured to a small flowering shrub, "is a bit dramatic. It wilts if I forget to water it for a day." Paige couldn't help but laugh. Dramatic plants. I love it. They spent the next hour walking through the greenhouse as Max introduced her to his friends. Each plant had a name, a backstory, and apparently a personality. At first, Paige thought it was quirky, but she quickly realized that Max's reserved demeanor hid a rich, thoughtful world. He spoke with quiet passion about the interconnectedness of nature and how tending to his plants helped him feel grounded in a chaotic world. When Paige mentioned her writing, Max brightened. "You write comedy? That's cool. Plants are funny, you know?" Paige raised an eyebrow. "Plants?" Max nodded earnestly. "They're like people. They fight for space, adapt to their surroundings, and some of them even play tricks, like this one." He pointed to a plant with tiny curling leaves. "Mimosa pudica. Touch it." Paige did, and the leaves snapped shut, making her gasp. "Okay, that's officially the coolest thing I've seen all week." Max smiled, and Paige realized she was enjoying his quiet, thoughtful company more than she'd expected. That evening, Danny and Paige returned home, each carrying the weight of their unusual but strangely meaningful experiences. "So," Paige began as they sat down in the kitchen. "How was your clown existentialist?" Danny smirked. "She was something else. Honestly, she made me rethink a lot of things, like maybe the best connections aren't the ones you plan for." Paige nodded. Max was the opposite, super quiet, but the way he talked about plants was almost poetic. It was like spending time with a walking Zen garden. Otis, sitting nearby, raised his eyebrows. "Does this mean you're both considering second dates?" Danny and Paige exchanged a glance. Then, in unison, "Not a chance." But despite their protests, Ava noticed the way both of them seemed lighter, as if their third dates had opened something new in each of them. Maybe the chaos had been worth it after all. The familiar hum of conversation filled the Larson family kitchen, the aroma of Ava's signature pot roast wafting through the air. It was Sunday dinner, the sacred family ritual where laughter and stories intertwined with clinking silverware and steaming plates of food. Tonight, the air buzzed with an extra dose of curiosity as Ava and Otis eagerly awaited Danny and Paige's reflections on their recent dating escapades. Danny and Paige sat across from each other, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and amusement. Otis, ever the cheerleader for adventure, leaned forward, unable to contain his curiosity. "Well," he prompted. "What's the verdict? Did you find the one?" Danny snorted. "If by the one you mean a clown who philosophizes about life as a cosmic joke, then sure. Zoe was great, but not really my type." Paige chimed in, smirking. And if by the one you mean a botanist who communicates better with ferns than with people, then Max was a gem. But no dad. No grandkids yet. Ava smiled knowingly. But did you at least learn something from the experience? Danny leaned back, running a hand through his hair. Yeah, I did. I realized I've been so focused on work and building HeartSync that I forgot what it's like to just connect with people. It's not about coding the perfect match. It's about being open to the possibility of someone surprising you. Paige nodded. Same. I mean, I love my independence and my writing, but watching Derek's passion for fitness or Ryan's humor made me realize how much fun it is to share a piece of your world with someone else. Otis raised his glass. To self-discovery. Not bad for 3 dates. As the months passed, Danny and Paige found themselves embracing the lessons their dating experiment had taught them. Danny, now more open to the idea of love, decided to use HeartSync as a platform for more than just matchmaking. He recruited his single friends and even some former dates as beta testers, using their real-world experiences to refine his algorithm. The app evolved from a sterile codebase into a dynamic, user-driven tool for fostering genuine connections. Meanwhile, Paige dove headfirst into her writing. Her experiences with the 3 wildly different dates inspired her to craft a romantic comedy novel with richly drawn, hilariously flawed characters. The story, Date Roulette, followed 2 siblings navigating the chaotic world of modern dating while inadvertently finding themselves in the process. Her witty prose and heartfelt moments caught the attention of a major publisher, and she landed a contract for her first book. One Sunday, as the family gathered again, the energy around the table was electric. So, Ava said, looking at Danny and Paige with pride. What's the latest? Danny grinned, setting down his fork. HeartSync is officially launching next month. I've got investors on board, a killer marketing plan, and get this, a 98% satisfaction rate from our beta testers. That's my boy, Otis bellowed, clapping Danny on the shoulder. And Paige? Ava asked, turning to her daughter. Paige beamed. I turned in my manuscript last week, and they've already greenlit a second book. The first one isn't even out yet, and I'm already working on the sequel. The family erupted in cheers, Ava tearing up as Otis raised his glass once more. To Danny and Paige, he declared, proving that love, whether it's for people, projects, or stories, takes a little chaos and a lot of heart. Danny and Paige exchanged a look, their sibling rivalry replaced by genuine admiration. Despite their rocky starts, the dating experiment had given them both something invaluable: clarity about what they wanted from life and a renewed sense of purpose. Months later, as HeartSync began to thrive and Paige's book climbed bestseller lists, both siblings found themselves more open to the idea of love. Danny went on his first unscripted date in years, this time not overanalyzing every detail. Paige, meanwhile, started seeing someone who shared her love of storytelling, though she kept the details private. Fuel for her next book, perhaps. In the end, the siblings realized that while love wasn't something you could code or draft, it was worth the risk of failure. And whether it came through an algorithm, a chance meeting, or a plot twist neither could see coming, they were ready for it. Thanks for listening. Please like and